Hello you lot, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be ranking the last 10 UFC pay-per-views. So we're going to be going from UFC 286 in March all the way to last weekend's UFC 295, and as you can see I've got three criteria that I'm going to be thinking about in this video. We've got hype and name value, the importance of the card, like what events happened on there that actually impacted the UFC in the top of the divisions, and also the general quality of the card, and then we'll have scores out of 30 for all 10. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Last place has to be UFC 289, and I'll tell you something, if it wasn't for Oliveira, all of these numbers would be at least one, maybe even two lower. He really did save that show. I can't remember a pay-per-view in recent history with that little amount of hype. That's why it has to get a 5, and again, if it wasn't for Oliveira, it would have been even lower. There was just nothing going into that fight card. There are two reasons why the importance is at 7. Again, you've got Oliveira, he's right back in the title picture, great performance, and also the retirement of Amanda Nunes, 100% the greatest female fighter of all time. It was an important moment, And again, Oliveira saves the card quality as well, but I will say, special shout out for Mike Malott. I mean, he almost got killed on the way in, a barrier fell on his head nearly, but he had a great performance on that main card. The rest of it was okay. The main event shit the bed, so I think 6 is fair. That's our number 10. Number 9, UFC 288, the pay-per-view just before that. I mean, again, like what I said about Oliveira, the return of Cejudo added a bit of name value on that card. If it wasn't for him, it would have been lower. Burns was on the card as well, to be fair. Importance at 6.5, again, a lot of that is down to Cejudo, I'm not going to lie. And the quality of the card, it was a decent card. The first half of the main card was actually pretty good. Yang Xiaonan got a good win. The co-main event, shit the bed. I can't believe Bilal didn't finish a guy with one fucking arm. The main event wasn't entertaining as such, but it was enthralling, it was interesting, so I think 6 is fair. 8th spot, another bantamweight main event, it was UFC 292. It's just a 7 out of 10 card overall. I've literally given 7s in every single category here. Like I've already said in the last two, there was one fighter in particular that really helped raise the ratings on all the cards, and on this one it was O'Malley. I mean, the card quality went up by literally just 1 point on its own after that main event. I always feel like those really big moments, even if the rest of the card wasn't great, it just makes it feel a lot better in your head, if that makes sense. I think this might be one of those cards that in time gets more important. If O'Malley can actually have a bantamweight title reign, then it will be massive completely for the UFC. So this card could get more important in time, but in the moment I felt like it was a 7. So overall, 3 7s, it's 21 out of 30. Fairly bog standard, but not bad. Number 7, UFC 291. Now, it's the highest hype so far, and I'm not going to lie, I was hyped for this one. I mean, any time that Gaethje and Poirier are fighting, sign me up. I'm not going to lie to you. Alex Pereira's light heavyweight debut as well. The only problem was there wasn't that much in terms of stakes. There was one number 1 contenders fight and a bit of a Tim Pot BMF title, so that's why importance is only at 6. But definitely one of the better recent pay-per-views in terms of actual quality. The finish from Gaethje over Poirier was amazing. I mean, all the hype that came from Alex after the fact as well. Derek Lewis running around in his knickers. The prelims were good. It was a good card. I enjoyed it. Number 6, UFC 286 in the lovely city of London. Now, if this was just based on mains and co-mains, this would be a lot higher. But the rest of the card, it was decent to watch, which I'll get to in a minute, but it wasn't... I'll explain. I mean, first of all, the hype was really big, especially in the week leading up. I mean, the amount of times I saw Leon's head kick over and over again, it was crazy. And also, anytime Gaethje's on the card, he's always going to bring in hype. And also, Usman's got a lot of name value. He's the second best welterweight of all time, so that was pretty high. It was obviously a very important card. It was the passing of the torch, basically, at 170. Out with the old, in with the new, that kind of thing. And I mean, the win that Gaethje got over Fiziev literally set up another pay-per-view headliner, so that's important in itself, right? Yeah, but the actual quality of the card was hard to rank. The rest of the main card was pretty pants, I'm not gonna lie. On the prelim, there were a couple of decent finishes. I mean, Ashmouz over, was it Sam Patterson? That was a crazy knockout. But obviously the main and the co-main really helped. However, the main event, like I said about Cejudo and Sterling, it wasn't a barn burner fight. It was more of an intriguing watch. It was, in my opinion, there's a fine line between intriguing and boring. That wasn't a boring fight, but it was an intriguing one, if you get what I'm saying. Into the top 5, and we're going down under for UFC 293. Now, this was one of those fight cards that was almost completely, at least on the marquee, carried by the main event of Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. But in my opinion, I was excited about Cap fighting. It was a shame it wasn't Kai Kara France. I love Tuivasa, as a lot of you know, so... Personally, there was a lot of name value and importance there, but I can see why a lot of people wouldn't think so. Honestly speaking, the rest of this card minus the main event is probably about a 7 out of 10 in terms of quality on the card. I mean, I cried after Ty lost, I'm not going to lie, but the reason why I've given it an 8.5 is if you see an upset like that, and I'm not just talking about one shot, like over 5 rounds, you see someone that you love completely piece up a guy that you don't like, that raised it up. It was I honestly can't even tell you how hyped I was for all 25 minutes, and that in itself earns it an extra point and a half. In fourth spot, I've gone with International Fight Week, UFC 290. Now, on an IFW, it's always going to have hype and importance. It's a flagship, like, yearly event. It's always going to have a little bit more extra just off the bat than other cards. But even despite that, it was still a very important card. You had obviously Duplessis with the biggest win of his career, one undisputed title fight, one undisputed unification title fight, and the retirement of the legend Robbie Lawler. It was probably, arguably, one of the more important ones of the year. There's only one that's got a higher importance rating. I'll get to that later. I almost ranked the quality of the actual card itself as an 8. There was a lot of great moments. Obviously, Volk, again, he proves why he's the best featherweight of all time. The co-main was a brilliant fight over 5 rounds. Obviously, Dricus was brilliant. Turner Hooker was nuts. It was a great card, it really was. Third spot, taking a bronze medal, was UFC 295, the most recent pay-per-view. Now, hype and name value were kind of evened out in the whole change of the heavyweight title fight. Lost name value when Jones and Stipe fell off, but everybody knew how good Aspinall Pavlovich was going to be, so it kind of raised the hype. So it evened out a little bit for me. Importance maybe arguably should be a bit higher. The only problem I found with the card was underneath the 2 title fights, like there was no other kind of highly ranked contender matchups. If it had a couple of those, it kind of looking at about an 8.5, but I think over the whole thing, 7 is fair. And 8.5 on card quality. The main card, it was all finishes, it was insane. And listen, I'm English, and Tom Aspinall won an interim heavyweight title by knocking out a big scary Russian. Alright, it's biased, I don't care, let's move on. Silver medal with a score of 24 out of 30 was April's pay-per-view UFC 287. Now for me, out of the entire year, I was probably the most hyped for this fight, because outside of probably Anderson Silva, Masvidal's one of my favourite fighters of all time. I mean, honestly, just him fighting in Florida and the Adesanya against Alex fight, that was enough to earn this 8.5. The importance as well, I mean, we had the retirement of a legend in Jorge Masvidal, and I think for Adesanya to beat Pereira, I hated it because I don't like Izzy, but I think it makes a third fight very plausible in the future, and in terms of long-term importance, like with O'Malley, like I said earlier, this card could definitely have that. And then card quality 7.5. I mean, again, outside of the main and the co-main, you had Rob Font knocking out Adrian Yanez. That was a great moment. I mean, Curtis Gastelum was just an insane fight. One of the best of the year, in my opinion. It was a great watch for pretty much the whole thing. It kind of feels a bit weird having this card as number 1. It definitely wasn't, in terms of the actual product, it wasn't the best card of the year. But like I said, there are 3 criteria, and the other 2 it ranked incredibly highly on. That's why it's ended up as number 1. I honestly think the change of opponents helped market this card so much better. Yes, we lost Charles Oliveira, which personally I love Charles. It was a bit of a shame, but to have the rematch with Volk and Islam was amazing. And of course, Chimaev against Usman is a fight that I personally have been wanting for at least a couple of years now. And I think the fact that it was kind of thrown on us with like a week, maybe 2 weeks notice on the 2 fights, and it was kind of like, it's here now. There was no time for all the shitty interviews. It was announced and then it happened. That raised the profile and the hype and the importance so much. It was imperative that at some point soon we saw the rematch of Islam and Volk, and we got it. That's why the importance is so high. And again, like I've already said, in terms of long-term importance, who knows what Hamzat can do at 85, you know? With that being said, the card itself wasn't actually that great. I mean, the officials had a bit of a nightmare. You had the Ankalaev Walker situation and a couple more on the prelim as well. It kind of killed the whole thing stone dead. But in terms of the pre-fight and the rest of the parameters on this video, again, like I said, that's why it's number 1. And that wraps up the video today, lads. I hope you enjoyed, as always. If you did, let me know in the comments. And if you've got any ideas on any future content I could do, again, let me know. The input is always appreciated. And yeah, I'll catch you very soon. Take care, lads.